Hi guys, it's the Chappiness guy. In today's episode, our friend Matt is back. He's back to share his story with us, to let us know what he's been doing since last year when we interviewed him the first time, and to let us know what has worked for him and what hasn't worked for him. So the first interview was interview with the vampire. This one is the vestibular night rises. All right, guys, find your Chappiness and remember to like, share, and subscribe. All right, we're live, Matt. How are you doing?
All right, how are you? Good to see you.
Likewise, welcome back to Vestibular Talks. It's so nice to have you again.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. So good to be back in familiar territory.
Yes. So it's been about a year since we last spoke, and since well, no, we've been speaking more often
Yeah,
than not. But I mean, since we did the interview last, and a lot of people have been asking me. Well, they said that our episode was great, and they started watching your channel a lot, and they learned a lot from you. So they've been asking me to do an update on how you're doing, how things are going. So here we are. What's going on 1 year later?
well, that's very nice of you to say. I'm glad people have tuned into my channel and listened to my ramblings. I'm glad they've been helpful, and it's great that you carried on promoting vestibular migraine awareness. I've been following all your videos, and as you know, the viewers won't know, we've been talking on and off, haven't we, through messaging. So 1 year on, yes, it's actually we're very close to 1 year since I started back at work after having a period off sick. So I would say to quickly summarize how I'm doing a year on, I would say I'm now about 95% better or in remission. So originally I used to think of it as kind of getting better, but I think it's probably more of a process of getting towards being in remission. So thinking about my experiences with VM, I obviously had the big one last summer, and then I had one about 10 years ago. For me, it seems like something a bit like, where you have that, as Boris Johnson over here talks about the sombrero hat, where you have like a peak. So I think you kind of have a peak of when it strikes, and you just get a big flat line for many years, and then suddenly it reoccurs again. So you go into kind of like remission and keep it at bay and feel perfectly normal. Then it flares up again. But then as the way it goes, like with the waves, they drop back down again. So that's really how I see it. So
It's very interesting and very accurate that you say that because when you said your first episode was about 10 years ago, I believe mine was about 15 years ago, and it lasted a couple of months only, and I didn't really pay much attention to it. Yes, I was dizzy,
yeah,
I felt weird, but this episode, same to you, it seems like it's the main chronic episode. Well, I'm hoping it's the main because I'm scared that there might be a bigger one in the future. So,
yeah,
so it seems like something triggered at our age now, where we're at now,
yeah,
that triggered to be stronger than the one that we had previously many years ago.
yeah,
And I noticed this pattern in many people in their 20s or 30s. They have like the big boom
yeah.
episode. Why do you think that is? Do you think is the stress, or is the hormones, is the foods? What do you think causes it that in our 20s and 30s the big episode hits? What do you think happened?
It's a really good and interesting question, and quite a difficult, tricky question actually. So you're very right. I think there is, for me, it was a bit different. I don't know really. It might be different for the people, but I had more of a smaller episode all those years ago, and then this more recent phase was much bigger and much more explosive and much more intrusive. So in terms of what causes that, I don't know. I kind of have like, I think with vestibular migraine, I think you have a hypothesis as to what causes it, or as to what's actually going on. And I think that hypothesis sort of changes over time as you read more, you talk to more people. So I think for me, it just must be, there must be a bit of a player in terms of kind of our genes. So I am from a migraine family. So my dad had migraines and my twin brother had migraines when he was younger. And that's a conventional migraine. So I think there must be kind of that weakness within my family. And then I think perhaps when you kind of hit the age of 30, because I think it's seen more, from what I understand, it seems to hit people more in the early 30s. There must just be sort of like a change in your body. Or so if you think about it, your body changes all the time, doesn't it? As in life, you go from being a kid to a teenager 20-something to a 30-something, eventually to a pensioner. So I think you need to think of like your vestibular system and your brain, and that kind of thing is just kind of maturing and changing over time. So, and that also for me is a good message of hope, which it shows you that because your body changes, you've changed and you've gone into this kind of crappy spell with vestibular migraine, but it will change again and you'll come out of that. So it's a tough one. So I'd say that's my current hypothesis, but it does change over time.
Now, that being said, recently in your latest video on your YouTube channel, you discussed the involvement of blood pressure, how you believe that blood pressure has something to do with this. And it is interesting because many medications like propranolol are prescribed to treat vestibular migraines or regular migraines, and but they are medications that are originally meant to deal with blood pressure. So what do you think is the connection there between blood pressure and migraine?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. So I read a post by a lady on Instagram who's a vestibular sufferer, and it just got me thinking because she was talking about how her blood pressure had been affected. It reminded me actually that all those years ago when it first struck, I had a fluctuating blood pressure. I remember a nurse looking at my reading, and he actually put the wind up me because he was like pulling all these funny faces. I'm thinking, God, am I about to like have a heart attack or something, or about to, depart this mortal coil? And I never really thought of it since then. But then when she made this post about how her blood pressure had been affected, but then they'd looked at blood pressure treatments like propranolol, as you mentioned, which also have a really kind of calming effect on the central nervous system. I'm a big believer that vestibular migraine causes quite significant disruption to your central nervous system. I've done a video on that because I think that's why it knackered my breathing. So if you can find a medication that calms that central nervous system, and that's kind of, from my understanding of it, I'm no doctor, but that's kind of what blood pressure meds do. They help calm that central nervous system and bring that blood pressure to more, lower it, say it's got too high. Then I think that might be actually a really useful avenue to explore, because it may be that kind of like missing ingredient that perhaps people might need in their treatment plan. And certainly I've been on propranolol now for a year, and at first I kind of dissed it a bit. I think I was a little bit unfair on it. It kind of feels like it was like, like one of those small planets in the solar system that you kind of, it's rubbish, there's nothing there, but then you discover there's a whole treasure of alien life form. That's how I kind of think about it. So yeah, I think that's something to look into. So I would recommend anybody listening or watching, have a word with your doctor, your GP, your neurologist, your VM expert, and say, look, what do you think of this theory? Can I have a bit of a go on some blood pressure drugs, see what happens? Taste and see, see what happens.
Yeah. Many people get prescribed. So I watched your video about you did it last year, and I watched it again recently about the, what's it called again? How do you call it? The holy trinity of medications.
Oh, so yeah.
In one of those, it was amitriptyline, which amitriptyline is very commonly prescribed to many people. And it seems to have, for the most part, good results. At some point, you didn't feel for yourself it was working, so you kind of stopped taking it. What gave you the impression that for you to say, like, I'm just going to stick to the other two and just remove amitriptyline out of the picture? Why?
So just to set the scene, so when I had the first episode all those years ago that actually I was always undiagnosed, amitriptyline was the drug they prescribed me, and I got better within about a month to 5 to 6 weeks. So then this time around, when it felt like the world ended and I got struck down by it. So I was on the sertraline to control the anxiety, which is absolutely crucial. You must control your anxiety side, but I'll come on to that in a minute. And then propranolol was kind of prescribed because it's, as you probably know, it's a fairly common drug to treat migraines. And then more latterly, towards the end of kind of I think it was around the time that I was returning to work and getting myself back into the workplace and a bit more back to normal, I mentioned amitriptyline to my GP, being a drug I used before. So he then, because he's a good doctor, he then prescribed me a small dose to see how it went. But what I found, to be honest, is that when I added the amitriptyline dose to that combination, I found that it was actually making me feel a bit worse. So I remember, I think I was prescribed 10 mgs. I used to take half at 5, and that was fine. But every time I took the whole 10, the next day I would just have constant derealization. So it was just sort of trial and error, really, that over time I kind of realized that I felt just more normal when I didn't take it. So I gradually phased it out, and I discussed it with my doctor, and he said, well, of course, yeah, as long as you are sensible and, phase it out gently over so many weeks, which is what I did. So I never looked back, really. So, and then I remained on the sertraline and the propranolol. So I guess the main reason was it just made me feel worse. But I wouldn't want to advise people if they're on it to suddenly because they feel worse when they start taking it. It does take time for drugs to kick in.
Yes.
I was just quite unique because I was already on other drugs. But please do, if you're being prescribed that, stick with it and give it some time to work.
Yeah. So Matt, two things that you mentioned. One is that the pill itself gave you more derealization, which I heard from many people that when they take amitriptyline and or nortriptyline, they feel more of that dream-like state, like things are not real, like it's a real world. So I think that could be part of the medication side effect, maybe that gives that impression. The other one was that that what you said is true. Like if somebody's taking it, they might feel crappy at the beginning because it kind of like it's like your body adjusting to this new thing in your system. So you're right. Thank you for the warning when you said to people, hey, maybe give it a try if it's prescribed by your doctor. But everybody's unique. For some people it might work, for some people it might not. So that's nice. Matt, something else that from watching your channel, diet. Many people talk about diet. I personally follow the migraine diet to a T. And I do feel good, but I do feel bad at days too. But you, for example, you're pretty free with your diet, right? Like you eat mostly what you want and what you like. And do you experience any changes in that when you eat something versus not eating it, or what?
Yeah, I think we'll just caveat that, my friend, with eating what I like. I am generally fairly health conscious. I don't want people to think that I just get McDonald's every night. No such thing. But yeah, so and that I think that if people want to pursue the diet angle like you have, and you've done very well, and great, good for it, go for it. If you've got the willpower, I'll be honest, my willpower is not that great. So what I did was I was told to avoid products that have, and I can never pronounce it's either tamin or tannin in them. I think it's tannin actually. So that would be cheese, red wine, and dark chocolate. They were the main ones. So I've pretty much always avoided them. But then I kind of thought, well, I always find that with food and the diet side, it's kind of almost like, where does it end? Where do you stop? And I kind of felt, well, vestibular migraine is miserable enough. It's hard enough. So I'm just going to knock out those key products, and I ain't going to make myself miserable by thinking, well, I've had a really crap week. I've felt some symptoms. Do you know what? I'm going to have a beer at the end of the week, and I'm going to have, some fish and chips or something. I kind of thought, well, it's hard enough already, and I'm not adding to that. And I'm not. Another thing I think that can happen as well, that people can start obsessing about the food side, and that can then make them quite miserable because they're constantly chopping and changing it, and often you don't quite know what's worked or what hasn't worked. So I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm just saying from my personal opinion, I put that one more to one side, because for me, the crucial two, and I know it sounds crass, but the two really essential treatments I think are getting the right medication combination, and this is the crass part, time. And I know when you're really poorly, you want to punch anybody who says you need to give it time and you need to be patient. I know, I've been there. You want to knock them out, but time heals. It heals everything. So, well, almost.
And you're right. With myself being so strict with the diet, it does make you a little bit miserable, because you're constantly watching what you're eating, what portions you're eating, and it's constantly like extra work. So you're right. It adds stress.
Yeah, but you're not doing a bad thing. You're doing a really good thing, because I've seen your post, and you post the most healthiest food that you're eating. That's going to stand you in good stead in many, many ways. So, and I try and eat well. Don't get me wrong, I do. So,
and even that, look, yesterday I had some leftover meat. So I had ribs the day before, and I had some ribs left over, and I ate them yesterday. Yeah. And about 2 hours after I ate them, I felt completely miserable. So, at that point, I'm like, is it the meat? Is it not the meat? So you start wondering, should I eliminate meat or not? But if I eliminate meat, I already eliminated gluten, dairy, sugar. If I eliminate meat, I only have grass and water left. I'm only
Yeah.
gonna be eating grass and water.
Exactly. Yeah, you might as well go and be a sheep in the field.
Yeah,
You don't
give me a
have
goat.
it. We've got to live a little. I mean, interesting. It's not really diet, but for me, so I wouldn't say that a particular food makes me feel worse, but I cut out those ones I mentioned. But what I have noticed does make me feel worse is if I have a really poor night's sleep. So let's say it's, I perhaps go to bed really late and whatever, or it's just one of those nights you get often in summer, don't you, where you just can't nod off. I had one the other week where I didn't nod off till about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was fine. I felt fine, and I was just mulling over how rubbish the last Star Wars film was. But what I did notice is the next day it kind of feels to me a bit like you've got a hangover, and I always notice that I feel that bit more. Normally now, fortunately, touch wood, I don't feel derealization except for odd flashes. But when I've had the poor night's sleep, it's kind of there more. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'd say if you can get a good night's sleep, so you might need to sort of, I don't know, read something really dull, like I don't know, someone's memoirs, something like that. I'm trying to think of some cultural reference someone who's really boring. So read their autobiography, and that might put you to sleep.
You're right, Matt. Being back at work, I am also working full time now again.
Excellent.
And it is challenging. It is challenging. You have some days that you are like, "What the heck am I doing?" Other days that you're fine. How have you been feeling at work, and how are the people at work treating you? Do they know? Do they know about the condition?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Are they accepting or what's
Yeah, I'd encourage anybody who's got vestibular disorder of any kind to tell the family, tell their friends, tell them how crap it is, play them our videos. That will articulate how crap it is, because we have to kind of get to a point where we can make people aware that this is quite a serious illness. It isn't just your Joe Blogs migraine where and I'm not saying they're easy. They're not. People get very poorly, but usually it lasts a day or two, and then they have a spell where they feel better. When you're in the chronic phase of VM, you don't get better for months. So be honest with people at work about that, because then they can help you make adaptations at work. For example, it does depend on the work you do. So a mate of mine called Alex, who I'm talking to in the UK, he's more of a practical job, whereas I'm more office-based. So I think it's easier in the office-based job to make modifications to make your working experience better. But you must tell your employer, otherwise you'll never get anywhere in terms of help. And in terms of how I found it, is I've broadly found it okay. So fortunately, I was able to get some mitigation. The main one I had was just knocking out some of the electronic light above my desk. And I sit next to a window, so I get a lot of natural light. And that's about it, because I'm not a demanding chap. But my survival kit is in that bag that I take with me to work. I will have my FL41 glasses, which I can present as usual. So they are in my bag, because sometimes, even when I've been feeling really well, I just suddenly get a spell of derealization. I suppose it's a bit like like a Vietnam flashback for like that teacher on Beavis and Butthead who fought in Vietnam, and he used to have them flashbacks, and you hear all the helicopters. So that's how it happens. I literally have residual derealization, and for half an hour I might need to put those on. And if it's a duller day, for example, then the electronic light's more prominent, so I stick them on. So think about the kind of things that you might need to cope at work. So your FL41s, maybe some medication if you need to take that, whatever it might be. Take them with you, and don't be afraid to use them. That's what I would say. Get that monitor dimmed so that that it's dark mode, night mode, whatever you want to call it. Get the mitigations you can get, and also rest up. So if you have a day at work and then when you get home, if it's possible, I know it's not always possible if you've got kids or other things like that, but have half an hour lying on your bed listening to a podcast. When I first started back at work, I would come home and I would just have an hour just resting, because it's very fatiguing, and I used to find that stood me in really good stead. And then by the evening I'd be nice and tired, ready for bed, and then the next day I'd be ready to go again. And don't think of it as, well, sorry I'm rambling a bit, but think of it, imagine if you were getting into a boxing match with Mike Tyson. You don't think about round 12 and round 1. So treat your working days at a time. Just the first round, I'll get through that. Don't need to worry about round 2 because I'm not there yet. You have your rest, round 2.
That's very good. That's very, very good piece of advice. We often tend to overthink and to think into the future, like what's going to happen tomorrow and what's going to happen the next week. You're right. We gotta live a day at a time. Yeah.
And the git that does that, the real git, is the anxiety as well. So if you've not controlled your anxiety, that will automatically jump forward in time. It will search for the worst case scenario, and it will then treat that as like it's a fact, like it's going to happen. So it'll say, you're never going to work again. You're going to lose your house and home. You're going to lose your partner. You're going to become, a hermit who can't do anything. And it will constantly replay that in your head. But if you control the anxiety with the right meds, that stops, and you become a lot more logical and practical about the condition.
Yeah. Matt, I'm going to get down and dirty with a very personal question that nobody talks about. And it's and I've been curious about it to see if it's just my case. Since this episode started of vestibular migraines, since this chronic episode started.
Yeah.
And so obviously you're not in the mood to get sexy or to have personal intimacy with somebody else because you're dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
And I noticed that when I started getting better and I started taking the medication, the flunarizine, no sexual desire whatsoever. I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling good, but I'm not feeling aroused. If that's a word.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I have a beautiful wife. Like she's she's beautiful. But I feel like I'm okay with no intimacy. I don't crave it. Have you experienced, and you don't have to answer if it's too personal, but have you experienced a decrease in libido or in appetite, sexual appetite, due to medications or due to the condition that you just feel that you don't really crave it, like you're just okay?
Yeah. Mum, can you leave the room, please? I can't play this with my mum and dad now, can I? So it's a really good point and really important to discuss that. So when I was on, so obviously I was on the 3 meds, sertraline, propranolol, for a while, the amitriptyline. I noticed that, I'm going to try and put this in really subtle terms, that my instruments were not quite as functioning as they should. And then that also, I think at the same time, probably did have a bit of an effect on the libido. And I think the other thing as well is everybody, no matter who you are, when you're really quite poorly, that's kind of, nooky's kind of the last thing on your mind. Yeah, but then I think when you start to improve, but then you might still be in a situation where it's almost like there's nothing wrong. It's just almost like that side of you's been switched off. So say you had like 5 switches on like Darth Vader's front, one of them that is like the nooky's just been switched off, and you feel fine other than that. So I think my advice for that would be, yes, I've had that, and I think that starts to go away more to kind of when you're at the stage when your meds may be just reducing a bit, but I would always prioritize keeping well with the right meds than getting my end away, to speak crudely. But I think the best thing to do in that scenario is discuss it with your doctor, because as we all know, there are lots of treatments out there now that can help you with that side of things. And the really, really crucial thing for that is to discuss it with your partner, because what a lot of people do, and it's quite a male trait, I think, actually, is that they'll malfunction in some way, or they'll not have the appetite, and they won't really say anything to their partner or discuss it. And you need to be honest, and then you can sort it together and get along. So yes, it's something I've experienced. I'd say though that because once I stopped the amitriptyline, there was that one less drug in my system, and things sort of returned more to normal. But the other side of the coin as well is, we ain't getting any younger, and we don't know whether it's just returning to old geezers who are more interested in sheds, maybe, or
I hope not.
I bet you never thought of that.
I hope not. But you're right, Matt. Before we go, you have become an advocate, an ambassador, a pillar of hope to many people. Your channel.
Very nice, very humbling. Thank you.
It's true. A lot of the people that talk to me, they also talk to you, and they also watch your videos, and they are constantly asking me, "Hey, Matt is doing this, Matt is doing that. Like, when are you guys gonna talk again?" So a lot of people look up to you, and what I like about them looking up to you is that you give them hope. You show them the down lows, but you also show them the up high.
Yeah.
And you show them that there is a hope to get better, and to feel better and improve. What would you like to say to the ones that are kind of like you explained before? We get into this episodes of vestibular migraines hit the top and then
Yeah.
it decreases again, and then eventually might hit the top again.
Yeah.
Some people seem to hit the top and stay at the
Yeah.
top for a long time. So they lose hope. What would you like to say to them?
Yeah. Excuse me. I might just have a drink. Keep talking.
No, go ahead. Some vodka?
I had now. It's it's a cherry and something. So
yeah.
I had a biscuit before I came on. And you know when you have like a biscuit and then some of it suddenly reappears in your throat like 15, 20 minutes later. I wasn't choking at your question or anything like that. So I would say, one point I wanted to make actually just before I come on to address your direct question, where you have that kind of peak and then it goes down, then you might get another peak years later. Don't forget though, you might have had that original peak and it went undiagnosed like me. Then you have all those years of feeling really well. Then the peak comes back. But then the next time, once you've dropped again, and you're that side, you're now actually prepared so that you're on the right medication. You know, you might know what some of your triggers are, like I mentioned, sleep. So, and you said you worry about it because it does cross my mind sometimes that it could come back. But don't forget, now we are much more prepared. We're like, imagine we're in the sea and there's a big wave coming. We are now trained surfers with the right surfboard to be able to ride that wave. So try to always remember that actually now it's been diagnosed and you've got treatments. If another wave comes, you'll be ready to deal with it and you'll probably not get it as bad and you'll probably be able to get over it quicker. And then in terms of the people who are at the crest of that awfulness, I would say, so you can see behind me probably there, we can see the dark night there.
Yeah.
So remember in the Dark Knight there was the line, the night is darkest before the dawn, and that's it. It just means it's just sometimes the night goes on a little bit longer, but the important thing to do is to kind of not lay down and die or take it, is to actually pursue and find that right treatment. And it sounds hard, but it's not really that hard. It's more a case of finding that right doctor, specialist, whether who's willing to work with you, and then just finding that right combination of meds and then adding time to that, and you will get better. And as I said earlier, your body changes over the course of your life, so you won't be in that position forever, because your body will change again and it'll probably ease away, or you'll get the right medicine and combination of meds and it will ease away. So just don't lose hope, do a lot of digging. Google's a bit of a double-edged sword, but look at kind of positive experiences like you, me, others, Amy, have all had, that you can get better. You just got to find that. It's just like any football club, isn't it? You know me and my football, but it's when that football club finds the winning formula that is out there, but it's just getting the right manager, getting the right players, and you're away.
Awesome, Matt. No, thank you very much for doing this with me again.
No.
I really appreciate it, and remember, man, find your chappiness and keep up with that hope that you keep bringing to people, and they look up to you. So keep it up.
Well, that's very humbling, very kind, but it just shows you that things have a silver lining. So the best thing about this thing for me is that I have been able to help other people, and as I said, you know, don't lose hope. Keep looking at me, keep looking at you, keep looking at Amy. Everybody will get better. It just sometimes takes a bit of time, and I know that's annoying, but it does.
Oh, sounds good, Matt. Thanks for everything, man. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. But let's do another chat a little bit. We'll not leave it another year next time.
Yeah. We'll do it sooner.
Yeah, we'll do it soon. I'm sure I've got some rubbish that I can talk about. So.
Meanwhile, I'll keep watching your channel so I can keep
Thank you. I'll keep watching yours too.
All right. Take care, Matt. Bye-bye.
Cheers, my friend. See you later. Bye.
Bye.